Good morning, ladies, gents and Pikachus. A little video about occultism for those who are interested. I thought since we've done a little bit of Islamic Quran stuff, and many of you know that I'm a Christian, so we'll do some Christian stuff later. But I wanted to talk to you and approach the occultism within Catholicism. Since it's the nearest and dearest religion next to mine, Catholicism claims that it is to do with Christianity. It claims that they worship Jesus Christ. But I'm going to show you a series of slides and talk you through why I think that is no longer the case, if it ever once was. In my view, Catholicism is a kind of layered, concealed version of the original Egyptian sun worship cult. And the sun worship cult was not something which was worshipped alone. It was part of a triune cult system where you worship the sun, the moon, and the oneness, which is Lucifer in today's occult theology. But anyway, I've done enough talking about the introduction to that concept. Now let's have a look at the particular things that are going to open your eyes to how this is actually in today's world, in all things, in all countries. And then we will end the video on how this affects the future of our nations and how this is going to become a big issue in our personal lives. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Consider first that Christ always says throughout the Bible, "None shall reach God apart from through me." Christ describes himself as the door. He's the door to heaven. So there is no need for a hierarchy of priests, yet we have within Catholicism the Pope, the ultimate guy, and he is like a king. He's draped in wealth and promoter of great sins. You may recognise also that though he remains unmarried, he wears a ring on his wedding finger, a silver band which is representative of the moon cult. This is taken from Egyptian mythology, in which the moon cult, who worshipped the one who we now know as Lucifer, wedded his priests directly to him. So they had to remain celibate and unmarried in life, and the way that you could recognise these people were wedded to the one who is Lucifer was by a silver ring on the wedding finger, as you can see here. In addition to that, the hand sign that this guy makes, the Pope, that is the sign of a horned beast, the goat, who we know also as Satan. In occultism, the classical symbology used to signify Satan was a white circle, and as you can see here, though it should be a piece of bread, the thing that is the object of worship for the Pope within Catholicism is a white circle wafer. And this signifies, instead of being the body of Christ, the body of the worshipper being sacrificed to Satan himself. If further evidence is needed, you can see here the Pope holding up a broken cross with an emaciated dead Christ hanging from it. Now, many people don't recognise this, but the bent element of the cross and the dead Christ is a perversion of the true cross, which should just be a simple cross without a body hanging upon it. And the reason the Pope uses this, in addition to his Dagon hat, the fish hat, which is the symbology of the serpent, the Leviathan, which is also the beast of Satan, this all comes from Egyptian moon cult worship and has now turned up in Catholicism. Also, upon the Pope's holy sceptre we find two ends of a snake, also signifying the beast of Satan, and the cross is actually a cross of Malta with a diamond encrusted in the middle, and this sits upon a hollow trapezoid, all these signals of Satan, taken again from Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology centres around three deities. You have Isis, Horus, and Set, and what happens in the classical Egyptian tale is they have a confrontation. Isis and Horus are destroyed by Set, and the way that Set does this is by stabbing them in the back after convincing them both that he is good and has their best interests at heart. And the main result of this is he takes body parts from them so that he can make himself more powerful. One of the body parts he takes is the all-seeing eye. Now, you will know this if you're into conspiracy or you've had any, you've Googled the New World Order or the Illuminati. The all-seeing eye is the main symbol which they use to describe themselves. Now, in keeping with those three tokens of worship we saw upon the head of the Pope, you have the fish head on Set in the middle there, you have the all-seeing eye on its original owner, Isis, on the right there, and on the left you have the obelisk, which is a symbol of fertility worship, which many pagan religions and occult forms of worship have used in the past, and all these three things are combined within Catholicism today. Although you are tricked into thinking this is a worship of Christ, it's absolutely not. It's actually the opposite of that. It's the destruction of Christ. We see here the obelisk outside of the Vatican in Rome, and the occult significance of the obelisk, although it's unknown to some, this again comes directly from the Egyptian pantheon. And what the obelisk signifies is the penis of Horus, who is killed and dismembered by Set, who later becomes Satan, using that penis in order that he can reincarnate himself under different names and forms in future, thus avoiding the holy justice of Christ. And if we take a closer look at what is on the base of this obelisk, though it's got Christ at the top of it, the base power of the obelisk is the crowned gorgon, or griffin in Western mythology. So the griffin is a symbol of the beast, which is a symbol of Satan, and the reason it is wearing a crown is to signify the victory over what is holy and the dominance of all those upon earth. So this means slavery of humanity. And our final piece of evidence is from one of the pillars inside of the Vatican, in which is depicted Lucifer in his true form, a dead skeleton, covered in a holy cloak, surrounded by God's angels, who are in fact the angels who defected from the Garden of Eden during Satan's original rebellion. Now, not many people are ever going to see this or know of its existence. It's not something which the Vatican freely admit to actually having in there. However, if you ever holiday there and you get to see the inside of it, those who are working inside the Vatican will proudly tell you about this and try and relate it back to the worship of the One. Now, you're supposed to think the One is Christ, but as we see, the One is Lucifer. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but how does this relate to Islam? What's this got to do with the Quran? And what it has to do with the Quran is Satan, or Lucifer, the light bringer, is an icon of the moon. That's why it's the light bringer, not the light giver. The light giver is the sun. And how the light bringer brings you the light from the sun is through reflection. And a reflection is a mirror image, so it's a clone. It's something that looks extremely similar to the original object, but is not. It's a complete copy, and that is what Allah is to God. Although you're supposed to think that Allah is the same as God, Allah has the same powers as God, it's exactly the same comparison as Lucifer has with Christ. He can take the form of Christ, he can be beautiful, he can be powerful, convincing, charming, compel you towards acts which seem good, but the underlying ethos and the purpose of that deception is to drag you down into sin and prevent you from finding your way to Christ, who is the Holy One, who will save you. You know, if you believe all that stuff, which I do. So now we're going to look at some more stuff to do with Catholicism, but we're also going to try and link that back to the paganism which is inherent within Islam today, starting with the Kaaba. When people see this cube, this Kaaba, which is the main point of worship within Islam in Mecca, they don't realise what they're looking at. I don't think most Muslims realise when they're looking at this, why this is a thing and how it has its significance to Islamic worship. So let's have a look at that. The first thing we need to know is the cube is hollow. It's actually made of flat surfaces. You can go inside it, there's an actual temple room inside of the cube. And when you unroll those, if you flattened it out, then it would look something more like this. And when you look at it flattened out, suddenly the iconography becomes much clearer, as we are looking at what looks like a flat box, but the shape of it, including those support struts at the side of each square, has a striking similarity to a piece of World War Nazi symbology, the iconography of the swastika. And keep in mind also, the last use of the exploded cube, which is the swastika, was by the Nazis at the end of the war, and then we never saw it again after that. But what we did see is the survivors from the German army who surrendered and claimed that they were only under duress doing that, they didn't actually believe it. And then they, together with some other people from across the world, started the United Nations, which is the current one world government process. All the countries that have signed up to it all agree, even though they don't tell us, that the thing they are aiming for is not only a one world government, but a one world religion in which they worship the faceless God called the One, who of course is Satan. And while Roman Catholics will deny this, they probably don't even know, the top echelon, certainly the papacy, the Pope himself, they will know that the reason they hold the Virgin Mary in such high esteem is because they believe, rather than Christ being the method to reach God, that the Virgin Mary is the method of reaching Christ, but not the real Christ. The Virgin Mary in this picture is the way to reach the false Christ, the one who is Lucifer, who is Satan. And that is the reason why in the Catholic Church they have the symbology of the United Nations star pattern above the head of the Virgin Mary, signifying reincarnation, going back to the Egyptian mythology of the penis of Horus. And finally we look at a very old painting from back in the Renaissance days from Austria, which shows the Virgin Mary being crowned as the Queen of Heaven, with the United Nations star pattern around the back of her head. So this proves beyond a doubt, and she's wearing the ring despite being a virgin, an unmarried virgin. She's wearing the solar ring on her wedding finger. So that proves, for me anyway, beyond doubt, together with the rest of the evidence that we have looked at, that the Catholic Church actually does not worship Jesus Christ. What they worship is the one, reincarnation through the womb of the Virgin, using the stolen, dismembered penis of Horus, controlled by the Pope, who is in fact their head priest. So there you have it. That is how to tie together the pagan worships of today, masquerading as true peaceful religions, Islam, Catholicism. They all come from that original Egyptian cult worship system, which was Sun, Moon and the One. And the One is the faceless god of many names, who we know today as Satan. So that's what I want you to watch out for. Obviously there's going to be a lot of fuss now that I've made this video. I'm probably going to be roundly criticised for bringing you these evidences. But what I would say is, don't take my word for it. Go and research the Egyptian mythology, the Egyptian pantheon. Research how Islam became the religion of worship in Egypt right after the appearance of Allah, when previously they had the Egyptian worship. Read the Quran to double check what I'm saying is true of the Quran and what Muslims actually believe. And then before I go, I just want you to think about this. Everywhere in an Islamic country where you find a big main mosque, you will find right next door to it a Catholic church, a Catholicism based temple of worship. But on the tops of these Catholicism based temples, these Catholic churches, you will find other pieces of non-Christian symbology. You'll find a crescent moon with a star, which is the symbol of Satan and the light bringer, Lucifer. You will find a deer with one of its legs forward like this, which is the symbol of the fertility worship, the nature god, the queen of the grove is the deer. And you will find things like a cube with a ball on top, which is the synthesis of the Kaaba cube, which is the swastika, with the circle of Satan on the top of it. And although these guys will never admit to this until it's too late, they will never ever tell you this is what it really is. That is the process of Luciferian or satanic worship. They will never admit to you what their true intentions are. And the reason they do that is because they want you to worship this guy. They want you worshipping Satan, but they know if they just walk up to you and say, "Do you want to worship Satan?" you're probably going to say no. So what they do is they hide the satanic worship inside other occult signals and icons, and then they hide that inside what they call to be peaceful religions. And that is how I think Islam, Catholicism and the United Nations all linked together, with a future plan to have a one world universal government and religion linked together, which will effectively be like, it'll be slavery for humanity effectively. None of us will have any option, we'll have to do it. Nations won't have their sovereignty anymore, they'll just be like slave nations of the UN. And this all started, this was all planned at the end of World War II by the people who defected from the Nazi army. So, I don't know how I'm going to prove that to you, because that's extremely difficult to prove, but what I would say is this. Anyone who's interested, see if you can look up the original United Nations Charter before it was created, when they were just discussing how it was going to go. Read all the documentation that is still available, which describes why the United Nations was set up, the countries who joined it, and what their vision of the future was. And you can literally read in there about the one world government, the one world religion being synthesized into the one world government. And they mention the Hegelian dialect, how they're going to present you with two pains, knowing that you will gravitate towards the lesser pain. And that's what we're going through at the moment. The bigger pain is a world war where everyone's constantly in conflict and lots of people die. The lesser pain is a united one world government and religion. That's what they're going to be pushing us towards. So that's the end of this video. I think I've gone on long enough. I've showed you enough. Like I say, I've given you the breadcrumb trail. You have to follow it on your own. You won't believe me if I tell you now, but follow those breadcrumbs. Use your intelligence and your free will to find out what you can. Make your own mind up whether this is actually the thing to, recognise as true, or whether I'm just making it up. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless, and I'll see you, lovely, beautiful people, in the next one. Bye now. So that's part 1 of occultism. We'll probably do more videos in future covering more aspects in more detail, but that's all for later. So until now, have a good day, God bless, and I'll see you, lovely, beautiful, wonderful people, in the next one. Bye now. Bye 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 bye.